COVID is what we call a coronavirus, and a coronavirus, it's called a corona because it looks like a crown. So it's going to be circular and has spike proteins on the outside. It's really similar to influenza A and influenza B. That's why it attacks the respiratory system. Nasal symptoms, it's going to be cold symptoms.
I lost my taste and my smell. I had one day where I had chills and then I would start sweating. Then I was tired and some headaches. The headaches lasted the longest, and that was the one that was my longest symptom, even when I was done having COVID.
I had high fever, I had neck pain, I lost my sense of taste and smell. So that was one of those, I'm pretty sure it's COVID. Kind of felt like you got hit by a truck because that's the tissues that it's gonna come in contact with first. It's gonna be aerosolized, so that's gonna be something you're gonna breathe in or get on your hands. And if you wipe your hands on your eyes or wipe your nose or cover your cough, that's something that can come into your body that way. It's why we recommend that when you cough or sneeze to do it in your elbow and not in your hands.
Mask up. For most of volleyball last year, there would be masks.
For cross country, he didn't tell us to wear a mask while we were running, but you had to like hold on to it, and then right as soon as we were done, you had to put it right back on. That was kind of nervous while we were like running races because not a lot of the parents had on masks last year, and that kind of made me uncomfortable because we were like really close.
I did speech, and most of the time it was social distance, and we definitely had to wear masks all the time.
So a mask works by keeping those water droplets that you breathe out. So think about if it's 2 degrees outside and you go outside and you breathe out and there's that little cloud of steam that you got, that's the water vapor leaving your lungs. So wearing a mask keeps those water droplets in that mask so that instead of going out in that cloud, it stays right by you. So a mask prevents you from spreading it to somebody else. Another person breathing on you, that mask isn't protecting you from catching it. It might a little bit, but you're really protecting other people from getting whatever you have. So that mask that people are wearing is to protect others, not to protect them.
What precautions or protocols did your family follow?
So for us, it was kids had masks on all the time, lots of hand washing. Anytime we went out, when we came back, it was everybody showers. We got our groceries delivered. So instead of going to the grocery store, we took advantage of having those delivered, and as much stuff as possible we did online. And I'm sure a lot of other people were in that same boat. Like Amazon had made a lot of money off of us. So, because instead of then going to the store, it was order and have it delivered, and that was safer, and it could stay on the doorstep in the sunshine for the whole day, which is another thing that you can do to break that virus down and mitigate that risk.
Did you make any like specific masks, or did you just do like thin masks, or did you make like
I made my own masks. So I have the masks that you guys see me wear are ones that I made, and then those are 2 layers of fabric, and then there's a filter in between, and that filter is interchangeable. And so that was I was a lot more consistent with making sure that those filters were changed very often when we first started, and that's something that, even though I will still wear masks when I'm teaching and then when I'm out with kids, but that's something that I haven't been putting the filters in because it's still to protect me from catching it. They protect me from spreading it, and that's something that a lot of kids don't realize, is that you wearing a mask protects me, and me wearing a mask protects you.
What protocols or precautions did your family take?
Well, most of us wear masks. It's kind of a little bit iffy now because some of us don't, some of us do. But in the beginning, we wore masks. In the midst of COVID and quarantine and everything shutting down, we'd sometimes bring back our groceries and we'd wipe them down just to make sure there was nothing on them. And sometimes we'd have groceries get delivered to our house, or we'd go pick them up but not actually go in the store, just because we didn't want to get COVID. And if we were to, we visit my grandma every week, so that would just not be good because she's pretty old, and one sickness could probably really do some damage. So we'd do all those precautions just to make sure she was safe.
We had homemade masks that had 4 layers of fabric that we would wear anytime we went out in public. And we also put on hand sanitizer like every time we would get in and out of the car.
I didn't have enough time to get over some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about in classes, and so there's a lot of things that COVID definitely impacted as far as my teaching goes.
Were there any experiments that you had planned for us to do last year that you didn't get to do because of COVID?
Yeah, especially with my semester-long classes, whoever would have taken either of my classes definitely had things that were cut off. A lot of experiences that people just didn't get to have. Fortunately, we got to go back in hybrid model at the second half of the semester, so I didn't have to cut everything. But yeah, I bet you guys missed a good eighth of some of the stuff that I would have liked to have taught you. Especially in science, we have to share so much equipment. We only have so much access to scales and graduated cylinders and stuff, so sanitizing them in between labs became increasingly more challenging. And then the eyewear safety glasses stuff, we have to wear those things in science too. Sharing of markers and colored pencils and just all the equipment. I was overly cautious at some of those things, I don't remember.
What protocols or precautions did the volleyball team follow last year?
So we used sanitizer on our balls before and after practice. We used hand sanitizer at every break and in matches at every time out. We used masks. We social distanced. We used 2 buses to get places instead of 1. We asked parents to drive players to matches and to tournaments so that they weren't on buses together. I think those are the ones that come to mind for me.
Lots of misinformation was spread around.
Part of the problem with COVID is it got politicized really early on, and I think there would be a lot more understanding and a lot more progress if that hadn't happened, because it kind of became a integral part of the election cycle, and that's something that never should have been, because then your political affiliation got really tied into whether you wore a mask, whether you agreed with the policies. And that's something that wasn't a positive for society as a whole.
I mean, of course, the media has a lot to do with it, and all of you are paying attention to what's going on. And I mean, I think it is a good way to share information that does need to be shared, like where can you go get a vaccination and who qualifies and what time can I go. That kind of stuff the media is good for. But of course, then it also spreads things that aren't true. So like, I mean, you guys all know those things that aren't true about this whole process. And so the media is good, but it also has its bad side.
It's important to choose media that their main goal is information and being like factual and informative. And if you stick with those media sources, then definitely there's not as much doom and gloom.
COVID made your job significantly harder?
Definitely, I had to think outside of the box. I don't know if you remember, we were putting together kits of art supplies to send home with students, and that had definite there was some success with that, but there was also a lot of drawbacks. So when you think of like art, you immediately think, oh, that's something you have to do in the art studio. Like that's not something you can do online. So I really had to take a hard look at what I was teaching to be able to find those meaningful learning moments that could be done online. And I think it really helped me grow as a teacher.
Wearing a mask when you're teaching people how to say different words in a different language is wrong. Wearing a shield is uncomfortable.
When students were put on quarantine or were at home with COVID but were well, I thought it was a great detriment, quite honestly, that they could not participate in class when they were already every other day. Students all know how to use technology, so I figured why not just let students continue to participate in class and to just go ahead and bring them in via technology so that they are missing less and still able to actively participate.
Halftime classes were, half the classes there, half wasn't. Really hard in PE with trying to do games and things like that. One class I had 4 people, so trying to play a game was pretty much non-existent. So
Thing that happens for a reason, so why not make the most of it?
Ready.